Hello, explainers. Today we're going to take off from Pocatello Regional Airport in Pocatello, Idaho. So let's get that flight set up. We've got Pocatello Regional selected as our location. Going to use Cirrus. Yeah, let's do something a little bit different. We'll do, instead of manually configured, let's do match real world conditions. And I'm going to do time of day. It's going to be 7 o'clock-ish. Let's just make it 7 o'clock. I'm in my favorite Cessna Skyhawk. We're going to go ahead and get that flight started. Love the Cessna. The Cessna is one of those aircraft that no matter how many times you fly it, you just grow more and more in love with it. It's easy to fly. It's easy to land. It's easy to understand. I mean, the thing is amazing. And at first when I got into X-Plane, I didn't understand a lot of the flight dynamics and where everything was, and I was used to Microsoft Flight Simulator X Steam Edition. And as I got into X-Plane, I realized, man, X-Plane is just so much more fun to fly because it's so much more realistic. I am always blown away with the level of detail that Laminar Research has put into the Cessna, which is evidenced by just the level of detail that they've got in this. Look at that, those clouds just come rolling in. Oh, you can't see that. Let's go ahead and switch over to our screen here. Now you can see that I've got my honeycomb yoke here. This is a new acquisition for me. I've never had a yoke. Normally I fly with a Logitech Extreme 3D, and I found that it just wasn't giving me the flight experience that I was expecting. And so decided to invest in a yoke. Did a lot of research. I looked at the Cytex. I looked at some of the more expensive ones. Don't remember what the names are. Yoho, something like that. And the Cytex and the knockoffs of the Cytex, they just seemed cheap to me. They looked like they were plastic toys, something that I would have had on my Sega Genesis back in the day. But I look at this and I think, you know, this had some thought put into it. Everything is just well done. Everything is well built. I mean, it's plastic, but it feels really solid. And it's got this nice flat top up here. Sometimes I'll put my microphone up here, and I use this little DJI tripod with my microphone stand, excuse me. And that seems to work out pretty good. Today I've got it on the boom arm, which is where it normally lives. But anyways, enough about the gear. So we've got real world conditions at Pocatello. Is it Pocatello? Yeah, Pocatello Regional. We're on runway 3, and we're going to do a north departure. Now, in the Cessna, you can see that I've got all my switches and buttons here on the honeycomb. That makes it nice. Let's come in a little bit. Looks like the dogs are playing happily. So on the honeycomb, we've got all of our light switches are manual. So I'll go ahead and turn everything on. If we switch over to X-Plane, you can see that now I've got all of my lights are on, my landing lights, my taxi lights, my nav lights, my beacon lights, everything's on. So that's a good start to our flight. Whoops, didn't want that. Let's turn off X camera. Now the next thing we need to do, I've got all of my master switches on, so alternator and battery are both on. And I have my avionics, bus 1 and bus 2 are both on. Boy, these girls sure like to play tonight. They're a little bit rambunctious. And then we have our startup here. And so on the Cessna, you're just really going to turn your starter knob to start. Switch that back over to both, and you're ready to roll. That's as easy as it is. Now, I haven't filed a flight plan, so we're just going to take off today, show you kind of the things that I do to get set up for flight. The first thing that I do is I'll zoom in on my magnetic compass. So we know we're on runway 3, and if you look up at our magnetic compass, we're lined up pretty well magnetically with 030. if we come down to our bearing selector, you can see, whoops, if we come down to our bearing selector, let's go back up to the magnetic compass. Too many buttons and switches here. Alright, so now you can see the magnetic compass is lined up pretty well with 030, which is in line with the runway that we're on. So we need to come down to our heading selector. You can see that we're a little bit off. Now that may or may not bother you, but the bearing selector needs to have periodic adjustments made to it, because if you don't, what happens is your course will be off if you're using autopilot, and if you're using autopilot, that could be significant over a long flight. And so I'm going to actually adjust this a little bit, get us back in line. Let's come in a little bit more straight on. So directly in line with 030, which is what the magnetic compass says we're at. Come back up to our magnetic compass. Yep, it looks like it's pretty close to 030. Alright, so now that we've done that, we'll get back in the captain's seat. Let's just make a couple of other quick checks. First of all, we'll come back in and take a look at all of our instruments. We're at roughly 4,420 feet. Looks like all of our gauges are working. Yes, I'm so happy to see you too, Zoe. Yeah, everything looks pretty good. We don't have anything on our GPS because we haven't filed a flight plan. We have not filed anything with ATC, so we're not going to have any kind of a squawk code, so we'll just leave that at 4700. Since we're leaving at 030, one thing that I do like to do is I like to set my heading bug, which is this small dial, to the heading that we're actually lined up on. So if I choose to turn on my autopilot once I get in the air, get a little bit of altitude, then I go ahead and hit heading on our autopilot, and it will be flying in the right direction. Many a time I've taken off, and I haven't done this before I take off, and I get into the air and I hit heading, and it's set to the exact opposite of the direction I'm flying, and then the plane goes into a turn, and it's a mess. So just go ahead and set that heading bug before you do anything. All right, Zoe, get lost. Go play with Lily. Go on. Go on. All right. So again, no flaps. We're going to go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of throttle, and we're going to take off. And it's as simple as that. Oh, we do need to take the brakes off. Important safety. Little safety tip there. Take the brakes off if you want to take off. So in X-plane, the plane will fight you a little bit as you start to go down the runway because of the torque of the engine, so you just have to kind of pay attention to that. Alright, now we're in the air. Now I've got full throttle. Looks like we have a little bit of wind here. Kind of struggling here to stay on the runway. I'm going to try and keep this at about 500 feet per minute climb, and try and keep it on that 030 heading. I'm going to get, I don't know, I'm at least going to get past the runway, and then I'll probably switch it over to autopilot just so that I can stay on that bearing. I'm really just taking off today. I'm not really doing anything fancy. May circle the airport a couple of times, come back in for a landing. 500 feet per minute seems to be a good angle of attack for the Cessna. You can maintain about 80 knots in the climb, but you do have to kind of watch it. And see, I'm kind of off course a little bit. So I think what we're going to do at this point is go ahead and turn on our heading, and then I'm going to turn on the vertical speed and set it to 500 feet per minute. If you look at our gauge, our vertical speed indicator, it is now settled down to about 500 feet per minute. All right, and you can see that our heading is now dialed in to exactly 030. So those are some of the things that I do on takeoff. In each aircraft it's a little bit different. For a general aviation aircraft like the Cessna, this is going to be pretty much the process that I follow, and it's real easy, real quick to get into the air in a Cessna, and hopefully that helps you in your own takeoff procedures. Get the lights on, check all the instruments, make sure that your heading indicator is lined up with your magnetic compass. If you have a flight plan, of course, put the flight plan into the GPS unit. If you're using ATC, you're going to want to go down and make sure that your squawk code is set to the proper transponder code so that they know who you are once you're in the air. And then check your flaps, make sure that they're not down. Check your trim wheel. I always put a couple of spins on that so that you get a little bit of nose up as you head down the runway, and get ready to take off. Take your brakes off, of course. That's something that I usually forget. Give her full throttle and head on down the runway. So hope that gives you some fun tips for flying the Cessna 172, and we'll see you on the next video.